your successes led you to being president of the AAUW Metro branch, but how'd you get here? Like, could we have a little background information?
Yes, I love that that's the pinnacle of success as well as being president of the NYC Metro branch. But it is awesome. Yeah, my name is Raegan and I am from the UK, but I moved here like 11 years ago, I think. I'm a singer and a poet and a performing artist, and the way that we tend to make a living is through teaching. So, in addition to my creative work, I've always taught, and that as the longer I've lived here has become coaching and consulting. And I, am I freezing for you?
A little bit,
Oh,
but
don't know why. Okay, if it happens badly, we'll deal with it.
sounds good.
Um, but yeah, I've for a decade or more have had a freelance or self-employed career as a contractor consultant type creative, and done lots of things in social impact, higher ed, any kind of comms and writing. Um, so all kinds of interesting things, and women's issues have always been like a theme through everything I've done as well, probably just because I'm a woman, also because I'm interested in advocacy. um, so I have been involved with AAUW for a long time, but I was not on the board, and then even when I was, I only became president last, like almost a year ago exactly. It's our annual election again next week. um, and that's only because I'm like at the point in my life and career now where I'm earning enough money that I have, luckily, I have the time to do stuff like this. There's lots of cool issues and lots of things, to get involved with, but when you live in New York City, you got to make that rent. And so it's taken me this long to be able to give the focus that you need to give to a role like this. And it's a very cool place to be. Yeah.
Awesome. I know you mentioned that women's issues have always kind of been prevalent, but what's like your first memory of you taking part in activism, like big or small?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and it's funny because I had a student um, this year who was like writing an essay answering a similar question, and she was talking about having attended the Women's March when she was like 9 years old or something. I never went to anything like that when I was a kid. I was never really aware of women's issues, even as a teen. I was aware of like differences in men and women, and but not something I really thought about that much or identified with. And I had a bit of a turbulent adolescence as well. I had some challenges at home. I moved schools like a dozen times, like a lot. I moved around a lot. And when I was 17, which at the time I thought was extremely old and wise, I was involved with an older man who was actually a music teacher at a nonprofit I used to go to keep out of trouble. And I don't know if you know the word groomed, but I was groomed by him, and that continued for about 2 years. And I wasn't the only girl. There were many other girls my age who'd been involved in a similar way with this same man. And so there, while I happened to be involved with him, there was a police investigation opened. This is really hard and heavy really fast, but it just kind of wanted to be genuine. Like this was my first experience with it. So I think when I was 19, seeing that happen and making the decision to, first of all, like uninvolve myself, which felt like a kind of betrayal at the time, because that's how those things work. And then secondly, speak to the police for their investigation. Looking back, I don't know if I saw it that way at the time, but that was an act of activism for sure. There were lots of girls involved who didn't want to speak to the police, who didn't want their parents to know, who didn't want anybody to know that this was something they'd been involved with. So I think that was a big deal. And these kinds of things go on for years. So it was like, that was before I even went to college. And by the time it was all like in court, I was in my final year doing my dissertation. And I remember handing my dissertation in and seeing the front page of the local newspaper that day and seeing like his sentence on the front page of the local news and thinking how funny. I've reached a pivotal moment of my life, like the end of my degree, and this thing is also like ending in a way. And it was bizarre, but yeah, that's probably my first act of activism.
Yeah. I feel like standing up for yourself is not as easy as it should be.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not. It's much easier to stand up for another person than it is for
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that probably answers the next question I have as well. So was that like the first time that you recognized the disadvantages that other women around you, women who might not be around you but in other parts of the countries are facing solely because of their gender? And like, I mean, you said you did something about it for you, but um, what about for others? And
Yeah, it was for others as well.
yeah,
I
yeah,
ended up not being um one of the like key witnesses in the case, like one of the key people to testify, but the other girls were. And obviously, the more people who say something, the more credible the people who are in the case come across, and the more
yeah,
supported they feel, and the more able other people feel to come forward themselves. So that was a big one. The narrative in the case, and I'd never been involved in a court thing before. But the narrative, of course, was that all of these girls, I mean, many of whom were women at this point, many of them were like, some of them were still teenagers, but some of them were like 30, and this had happened like 10 years ago. So a very big range of women, all kind of giving similar testimonies about their experiences with this man. And it was framed by the defense as a witch hunt, and that, you know, all these girls were like attention seeking, or we'd somehow been asking for it. And they brought up things like the kind of clothes we would wear, the fact we smoked cigarettes and we drank, and, you know, we were just like the wrong uns. And it struck me at that time, like this being a male teacher and female students, how different that narrative might be if it was a female teacher and male students. And that I'd never heard of a case of a teenage boy speaking up about something like that, even if it was a male teacher and male students, and it being called a witch hunt in the same way, or people asking about what he was wearing. So that, yeah, that was a big point of awakening
yeah.
for
That's
me.
wow.
It's true, right? You would never hear that the other way.
I just like in my mind, so like at school we like have denim day and we all wear denim because
Yeah,
yeah, like celebrating denim day and like raising awareness. And in my mind it's like yes, like this is an issue, but also like oh, it's not like not that it's past, but it's like oh, this was a really big issue, now it's less of an
yeah,
issue. That's just not.
yeah, yeah. It's just even maybe it's trickier to spot because it's the more we've maybe dealt with some of the blatant sexism, even though like a lot of it we haven't, but it's in those places where it's uncomfortable to talk about, nobody really wants to, and that's, yeah, it's
Yeah.
insidious. Yeah.
Wow, that's I can't believe you had to deal with that.
Right, I
That's like
know.
because I feel like if you have that many people saying the same thing, in my mind, like obviously like that's gonna be taken very seriously.
I
And
could talk
apparently
about
not.
this, yeah, I
Yeah.
could talk about this all day because that's another um like sexist thing that happens in the criminal justice system to do with these kinds of cases. And actually there's a whole conversation there to be had about the fairness of trial by jury, and the way that we try evidence, and the way some things are admissible as evidence and others aren't. So for example, if you remember, it was either last year or the year before, the criminal case for Harvey Weinstein in New York. So he'd been tried, he'd been found guilty years ago, and he'd been appealing it. It was overturned, and it was overturned because the judge decided there was unfair evidence included that shouldn't have been included, which was called Molyneux evidence. So in the case of Harvey Weinstein, there's hundreds, literally hundreds of women who have stories about this, but not all of them are technically illegal, or not all of them have enough evidence for it to be triable. And also, not all of them happened in New York. So some of them are tried in California. Some of them are in different, like they're not the laws, and the way it works in the US means that not every crime somebody has committed is tried in the same case because it's separated by state. So a Molyneux witness is a witness who shares character evidence about somebody. So they might tell a story about their experience with a person, but they're not actually part of the charges. So in the case of Harvey Weinstein, it was women who said, I was assaulted by him. He came on to me in this inappropriate way. I was attacked by him in another state or at another time, or, you know, there's not enough evidence for it to be charged, but I just want to add my voice to the evidence. And it was decided that that was inadmissible, because the only evidence that should be considered are the women involved in the actual charges, of which I think there were only 3. Do you think that's fair?
Like,
I'm not sure I think that's fair.
I feel like no one should think that's fair.
Right. I kind of see, okay, if there's the argument of if there's a bunch of people who just want to kind of chat shit about you, maybe that shouldn't be counted as official evidence. But then the fact that there's a load of people who want to chat shit about you is evidence.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
why is there?
In and of itself, that seems a little suspicious.
Exactly. And it isn't the idea that a jury is, you know, smart enough to be able to weigh that when they are judging a case, that like, okay, maybe this person is just out to get this guy by adding their voice to the mix, but that's something you weigh up in your
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the reason that the whole Weinstein trial happened again last year, taking up more taxpayer money and getting more people to have to come in and testify again, was because of Molyneux evidence, just like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's my little spiel.
I feel like I wasn't ever, like, obviously I understand there's like the whole, oh, innocent until proven guilty and all of that, but I feel like I was never really taught about how unequal the justice system was until really last year at the AAUW New York State meeting
Oh,
when
really?
Mescan was giving her speech. I
Yeah.
recognized it, but again in my mind it was like, oh, this was an issue and it's probably been addressed by now, and it just hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a rule of thumb in law. I think it's called Blackstone's law. Um, that, and it comes from like hundreds of years ago. Like this guy came up with this idea that it's better for 10 guilty people to go free than it is for one innocent to go to prison. Immediately you think, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That would be terrible if an innocent person went to prison. And that's why we have innocent until proven guilty. That's why the justice system leans in favor of the accused, not the accuser. But when you think about it, like, it's better for 10 guilty people. Really? Do we really want 10 guilty people out
Like
there?
just running around, yeah, no, I feel like that seems,
Is that better? I don't know.
but then again, it's like, oh, I feel like,
Obviously, there's a balance, but
yeah,
but yeah, that's a lot of our approach to justice is based on that idea that you should benefit the accused.
and I feel like a lot of the time that is true, but sometimes it gets to a point.
Yeah.
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 I know personally, like, I wasn't taught about that in school, but were you taught about like other gender inequalities, like the pink tax or the pay gap, things like that in school or when you were little?
No. I think we learned about the suffragettes, or like the equivalent in the UK, like votes for women, but it was like part of history. It's not part of this is still an issue today. I don't remember. I didn't even realize things like a woman couldn't get a credit card on her own until the 1970s. We weren't taught anything like that in school. So yeah,
Just talking about that with parole, I was like, oh yeah,
yeah,
I feel like when we were taught about it, it was like, oh, women couldn't vote, and then they could vote. Okay, great. And we weren't taught about,
and now it's fixed.
yeah, initially like we weren't taught specifically about how that affects today.
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I now have been taught like since taking US history, like a more in-depth version, and like we have research papers, we could write about anything we wanted. So I wrote about like the fight for contraceptives in the US. It's like
Yeah,
very different. And it's just something that we wouldn't normally be taught about, but is so important.
yeah, 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 it's true. It wasn't until I moved to the US that I started thinking seriously about these things, and I was 23, I think, which sounds crazy. But there's a class issue here as well with things like the gender pay gap, because if all you ever earn is minimum wage, there's no gender pay gap to you. That kind of thing is only applicable when you are in a professional salaried position, and usually like in a white collar job. So just earning money was like every job I had been in like a bar or in a retail, like on minimum wage. So it was never something that seemed directly relevant to me or that I was sure ever would be. So it wasn't until I kind of started entering the workforce and aiming a bit higher for myself, I guess, that I started to even think about things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. I feel like, I mean, obviously there's so many issues that are like emphasized by the extreme um
Mhm.
wage gaps in the US, but
Yeah.
I feel like that is a good insight. I don't think I would have realized that.
It's a middle class problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Um, Specifically about AAUW now, it focuses on increasing the number of women and the opportunities for women in higher education. Um, how and when did you first join AAUW?
It does focus on increasing the number of women, which it has succeeded at though. So AAUW was founded in 1881, and most universities at that time did not allow women to enroll, even if they wanted to. And so the opposite, not the opposite is true. Men are allowed to enroll, but there are now more women than men in higher ed, and more women that graduate, which is interesting in itself, right? Um, but so they've kind of achieved that, but they are still one of the largest funders of graduate women's education. And graduate students who are female still face unique challenges, like they are usually more heavily burdened with childcare. It's usually harder for them to take time out of work. It's harder for them to get professional development opportunities compared to men who are in the same kind of demographic. Um, so and AAUW does a lot of like Title IX stuff and advocacy and all kinds of other gender equity things as well. I became involved the same way most people do. I was looking for money. I was looking for funding. I moved to the US on a Fulbright scholarship, which was a 1-year scholarship for a 2-year program. So I was looking for funding for my second year, and the AAUW International Fellowship is one of the only fellowships that women from the UK who want to study in the US can apply for. So I applied for that, and I actually didn't get it. But in applying for it, I've found out about AAUW. I found out that they're this membership-based organization, so there was a local branch. So I started going to the local branch events and meetings, and then started going to the statewide meetings, and then the East Coast conferences, and just became part of this amazing, huge community of awesome women who believe in the power of higher ed. And that was, and now I'm the president. So even though I didn't get the scholarship,
Hey, it all works out.
it worked out in the
That's
end.
crazy. How do you see AUW evolving in the near future?
Oh, we always need money for education. Um, AAUW is at a really interesting time in its life because it is so old. Not in a bad way, but it's so old and huge and like has achieved so much, and it has all these little communities all over the US who are really committed to the mission. But then also constantly lots of younger people coming in on fellowships and stuff. So but there's also a lot of interesting stuff going on with higher ed in general, and the perceived value of higher ed, and it's the role of universities in society, and lots of interesting conversations. So I'm really interested in those conversations, and I think the branch, the New York City branch, is one of the more like fortunately positioned branches, just in that there are so many universities in the city, like within this little kind of 8 mile radius. So the potential I see for it is that we have all these amazing institutions that really should be civic institutions. If you're a university in New York, you should be doing something beneficial for the people of New York, regardless of whether they study at your institution or not, or work there. That, for me, that's the point of a university, is to benefit humanity and the universe and progress our collective intelligence and well-being. So I think that's the biggest potential the New York City branch has, is to kind of serve as a hub for connecting all of those institutions and the people within them who are working towards gender equity, as well as people who work in the private sector outside of that, people who live in New York. Just, yeah, kind of a big community of people who like learning and advocating and teaching. And I think that's the way forward. Community,
Yeah.
essentially.
Because I feel like they've obviously accomplished so much, like you said, there are now more women than men. And so it's like, okay, where do we go from here?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah.
And one place we go, like one big place, is studying women's issues, like women's health issues, which are still massively underfunded and understudied. So if we can platform the people, it's not always women, the people who are researching them and the breakthroughs that they're making, and they can maybe meet people who work in policy, so that the research that's happening in medicine can influence the research in policy, and so on and so on. That's how you make progress. You know, that's the point of a university. But those people may not all exist in your specific university, you know, like they exist all around you. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
we're working on it.
Um, I know, like currently, I feel like there's a big emphasis on women's voices being represented, like with Roe v. Wade, things like that. What's AAUW doing currently to focus on that?
Oh,
And
all kinds of things.
yeah, I feel like I know this. This is more for everyone else, but
there's oh my God, I don't even know if I can like summarize all the priorities in there's different priorities in different states as well, for obvious reasons. Like abortion access isn't as much of an issue in New York as it is in Mississippi.
yeah,
But human trafficking is a big priority in New York. The ratifying the ERA is a big issue. I mean, everywhere, but in New York as well. Title IX stuff within schools is always a big one. And then, of course, we're coming up to midterms, so just voting based
yeah.
who you're voting for and how are they prioritizing women's issues as well. There's also a big push in New York about access to menstrual products, which is great, and there's a lot of laws kind of coming in waves over the country about that, but then getting the law passed and then actually implementing the thing is usually
Two different things,
different.
yeah.
So yeah, it all gears around gender equality, usually linked to education, but not always. I mean, access to period products is applicable to anyone
Everyone, but also
inside or outside.
education. Like
Exactly.
you can't go to school if you
Exactly.
aren't comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Pay equity is a big thing as well. They do salary negotiation workshops and training, and so all the big ones that you can imagine, all the big issues. But then the great thing about the membership structure and the branch structure in AAUW is you can focus in on like, okay, well, what are the problems specifically in New York State, and even in New York City, there are different rules and regulations for certain things like maternity leave and issues that affect women. So you have to approach it from a local level
Yeah,
to be effective.
awesome. I feel like your voice is very representative of the larger AAUW group, especially AAUW Metro. So how do you use that to like motivate other members and just other New York women to take a stand?
That's nice to hear. The voice of AAUW. I love that it's called the American Association of University Women, and it's in New York, and it's like a British woman.
Oh yeah.
International diversity, you know. But yeah, I hope that's true. That's awesome. I think going first is always important. A lot of people feel empowered to speak up once just one person does. So being that person to be like, hang on a second, you'll often be surrounded by people who are like, yeah, exactly, me too.
Yeah, it affects your
But
first
then,
story too. It's like
yeah,
once you post
exactly
something, other
right.
people will as well.
Exactly. But then also organizing. There's a hell of a lot of people out there who care about these issues and want to do something. They just like don't have the bandwidth in their life. They work full time, their parents, their, whatever else, to figure out like what is that thing I can do or say or where and when. So just organizing opportunities and events for people to just show up and get involved in quite a kind of low lift way is an extremely important part of allowing people to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's great. Um, well, I hope your story is able to inspire other women to take a stand. But if you had to start from scratch today, what would you do? I feel like that's hard because you came to the US with this in mind. But
Yeah, if I had to start from scratch, like what's from scratch, like from being born? Like how far back are we going?
right now, right now, you haven't done any of it, and you're starting, you're realizing the problem. How are you going to start taking a stand against it?
That is one of my favorite sayings. It's often used to talk about investing, but it's true of lots of things. That like the best time to start investing was 10 years ago, but the second best time is today, right? It's the same with standing up for yourself and advocating and getting involved. And there are, we live in the age of the internet. There are so many ways to learn about an issue and find communities, and especially if you live somewhere like New York City, go out and get involved in groups. It's almost actually we have the opposite problem to previous generations in that there's almost too much to choose from. You can't be involved in everything, and you can't care about everything because you just spend your life really depressed if you try to focus on all the issues that are in the world. You have to kind of pick something that is resonant for you and go and pursue that thing. So if I was starting today, if I just woke up today and was like, women's issues are a thing, I think, I don't know, in America, the big one seems like abortion access to me. I think that's the thing that would stand out to me most and does stand out to me as somebody from a country that has abortion access. Um, that's just really barbaric. I'm a big believer in dialogue, and I totally can see the perspective of somebody who is religious or even not religious, but thinks like a fetus, an embryo is a person, and therefore we need to protect that person's rights. I get that perspective. But what I don't get is like in the US, there are cases where abortions are medically necessary, like a fetus is not viable, or a pregnancy has already ended and you're having a miscarriage, and the treatment for miscarriage to make sure there's no material left behind to cause infection is abortion. It's the abortion pill. And even in those situations, people are like, no, no, and
Yeah, it's
that
like
makes
when
no sense to me.
you're disregarding the rights of
The
humans
mother,
for
yeah,
yeah.
the living human being. But you're just that doesn't make any sense, and that just seems like laws being implemented carelessly, like they're too sweeping. They don't see that there is always nuance, there is always exceptions, um, and the lack of education, I think, about the fact that that is even true. The fact that abortion medication is used for treating miscarriages is probably something just a lot of people don't know, and they just so therefore they regulate on what
Yeah.
they do know.
I also
But
feel like the extreme approach, it's like, oh, pro-life, oh, pro-choice. It's like, okay.
yeah, yeah, and it's never it's very easy to black and white things that way. It's always, almost always somewhere in the middle is the
Yeah,
sensible position. But like, of course, we're not completely pro-choice that if you're 9 months pregnant and you decide
exactly.
you
Then it's
don't want
like,
to have a
okay.
baby, then yeah, okay, no, you don't get a choice in that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Like,
Um, there's always nuance, which is exactly why dialogue is important, and education and learning and sharing your stories, and that is supposedly the crux of democracy that we've seemed to have forgotten.
yeah. Um, I feel like you've answered this a lot, but inflection points in your story that opened doors or changed your approach. I know your whole experience from ages 17 to 19. and past that as well, and then coming to
Yeah,
the US, I feel like those all seem pretty moving.
definitely. Yeah, I don't think I saw that experience as a teenager as such an inflection point until later. It just seemed like a unfortunate thing to have happened. Um, but coming to the US, oh my God, I won a Fulbright scholarship to come to the US. I would not have even been able to afford the flight if I hadn't won that. Never mind study at the new school and live at International House. And I'd never even visited the US on vacation. Like that was way too expensive a vacation for my family or for me to even dream of. So that was a completely surreal moment in my life and still is. And my life would have been very, very different. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just very, very different if that hadn't have happened. And I think I sit on a few or have sat on a few different boards within the Fulbright organization as well. And you see the same thing with Fulbrighters as you do with AAUW fellows, in that they all have that experience. They all are like, this changed my life, and they are so committed therefore to like giving back and the continuation of the organization, and invested in donating time and effort and energy and all these things. So I think that's what makes it such a great community, is it does change so many lives, and people want to give back to it because of that and keep it
Yeah,
going.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah, it is awesome. It's very awesome.
Yeah, well, I can say I'm glad you got the scholarship. I feel like
Me
you've
too.
done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was insane. It was so
Yeah.
insane. Still is.
Okay, well, this is my last question, then feel free to add anything else you'd like. But what are some approaches you have for other people who are getting started in advocacy? Any organizations you'd recommend joining other than AEW, of course? Um, but
Yeah. Yes, join AAUW. You don't actually have to join AAUW to get involved in advocacy. AAUW does. If you go on the national website, so there's the national organization, which is like countrywide, and then each state has a board, and then within each state there are branches. So you could find your local branch, you could find your state board, you could join national. If you join national, they will send you out newsletters about the kind of advocacy initiatives they have that apply nationwide. So one really easy one they have is this 2-minute activist thing, where they'll literally just email you, like, if you care about this issue, click here to send this email to whoever, and it takes less than 2 minutes, and it's a really easy way to get involved. That kind of letter writing stuff that people used to do, like letter writing clubs, it's very easy to do digitally now. Somebody writes a draft for you, you just copy paste, send it to this person, and you've been an advocate that
yeah,
day.
I'm sure you could even use AI to do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure a lot of people do. So yeah, that's a really easy way to get involved. They also have voter issue guides. So there's a 2026 one out now about the issues impacting women, and what you therefore should be looking for and asking of your candidates wherever you happen to be. League of Women Voters, I think, does similar things. There are organizations, as far as like other organizations, there are organizations for anything and everything. So depending on what you care about, if you care about the environment, Google environment agencies or environment nonprofits near me, and see what they're doing. And I think the grassroots level is the way to go. It's hard to feel invested, really, ironically, in an issue if it's too big. It's why, like, something like climate change, a lot of people hear about it and think, yeah, that's terrible, but like, what can
Yeah,
I do about
because
that? Yeah, or
exactly,
like
it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to see an impact if I change, so why should I?
exactly. I recycle my Coca-Cola cans, like, what do you want me to do? And it feels very, even when you hear about disasters in other countries and wars, like, it's very far away from you. It's a very big issue. It doesn't really seem like there's much you
Yeah,
can do.
same thing with
But on
history. It's like, oh, it's past.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So on the local level, find the things that impact your neighbors, your city, and go out and get involved in them. And that might be cleaning up a park. It could be something super simple. But just meeting the people that you live around and having conversations with them and seeing what do they think and why do they think that and who are they voting for. And I think that's what ancient Athens did well that we've kind of forgotten. We need to bring back the agora, the forum, and the dialogue. Like in the
Yeah.
UK, it happens in the pub. We don't really have
Oh,
a similar. There's not really a similar thing in the US.
yeah.
I don't think so. The bowling alley, maybe. I don't know, wherever the baseball field. But yeah, get out there and in your own life, stand up for yourself when, especially if you're a woman, it's so hard.
Yeah. But
Say
if you do,
something.
other people will tag along. So
Exactly. There's an amazing catchphrase on the London Underground about like if you see something suspicious,
say something.
say something. So it's see it, say it, sorted.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah, we
It's
just
not
have
always sorted if you say it, but like see it, say it, sorted.
most, I mean, like here, it's just if you see something, say something. So
You see
I
something, say
like the,
something. We may or may not sort it,
yeah, you never know.
but tell
Oh,
us anyway. Yeah.
well, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. You are so welcome.